Alabama gets the number one safety in the country. What was it about Alabama?
LSU Tigers, number one. Go Tigers.
In the next 4 years, I'm going to Denver University.
Call into the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline, 256-576-4977. Now, here's D Squared.
Welcome, everyone, to our final edition of this week of the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio with D Squared. I'm Drew DeArmond. And if you haven't, please download our app, our Blitz Sports Radio app at the Google Store, at the Apple Store, to support our streaming station, which we are 3 months plus into. Already blown through a college football season, which is crazy. But recruiting is going to get crazy. It's going to be this next 3 weeks or so until December 21st through the 23rd is going to be insane. There are going to be flips. There are going to be storylines to follow, and we are going to bring that all to you from 9 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. And also, just be aware, we're also starting to replay the Recruiting Blitz at 10 p.m. At 10 p.m. at night. Now, depending on programming, but it should be being replayed. Now, there's going to be some UAH basketball tonight. UAH is going to be taking on the Lee Flames. Huge rivalry. Should be a great crowd over there at Spraggins Hall. And Steve Moulton and Scott Tyson will be on the call for that tonight. That they believe the tip is going to be just a shade after 7:30, and that is going to be an outstanding game. But after that, just be on the look for the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. But again, we want you to tune in live. But if you miss it, you can check it out on 97.7 The Zone, our sister station. And if so many of you have, but if you haven't downloaded the 97.7 The Zone app, please do that just in case you're out of the area or you want to listen on your phone, listen to UAH men's basketball tonight. Also Alabama basketball with South Dakota State. They're going to be playing on Saturday. I hope to be there in attendance on Press Row for the Crimson Tide, returning home after that unbelievable 2-1 run at the Phil Knight Invitational as Alabama beats the Michigan State Spartans 81-70, and who were ranked 12th in the country at the time, and then 103-101, 4 overtimes over then no longer number one North Carolina, who has now lost 3 in a row. Alabama dropping a game to a ranked UConn team, and Danny Hurley and his team wins that event as they totally mauled a pretty good Iowa State team from the Big 12 in the championship game, in the championship round, to go 3-0 in the event. But again, we're going to be home to some Alabama basketball this weekend, UAH as well. UAH is going to be playing on Sunday also, so UAH is going to have a lot of action going on over at Spraggins Hall, and we look forward to that. And we wanted to make you aware of some programming that is coming up here on ESPN 97.7 The Zone and the Blitz Sports Radio. So we're going to have a lot going on, in the next few days, and we just wanted to make you aware of that, as UAH, as we said, is going to be taking on the Lee Flames, and then Shorter is going to come in on Sunday at 4 o'clock. The Shorter Hawks are going to take on the UAH Chargers. So UAH with a couple of GSC home games coming up at Spraggins Hall. So check that out. Steve Moulton and Scott Tyson will be on the call on tonight at 7:30 on Friday night, and then at 4 o'clock on Sunday. And so that's some programming coming up. Alabama basketball on Saturday as well. Alabama, as we said, coming off of a very nice road trip, and Alabama is going to be taking on South Dakota State, who made the NCAA tournament a year ago. They're not quite as good this year. They had a lot of losses, I think, personnel-wise. And so, but Alabama will be back inside the friendly confines of Coleman Coliseum, and we are going to have that game coming up on Saturday. The Alabama Crimson Tide are going to be taking on South Dakota State, and that will be a 7:30 p.m. tip, so that pregame should start around 6:30 with Chris Stewart and Brian Pasick bringing you the basketball action on the hardwood for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And speaking of the Crimson Tide, we're going to talk to Jimmy Stein. He's going to rejoin us on the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk recruiting because Sterling Dixon, one of the top 2024 defensive players within the state of Alabama and really the country, committed to the University of Alabama yesterday. He decided to end his recruitment early now, but of course, until he signs on the dotted line, especially in this NIL era, nothing is 100% certainty. But he did commit to the University of Alabama. His good friend and former teammate Deontay Lawson already getting a lot of playing time in his second year with the program at inside linebacker. He was also a Leopard from Mobile Christian, so they know each other very well. That was part, I think, of the draw for Sterling Dixon to come to the University of Alabama. Also, his former coach, he actually has one more year. They made the state semifinals this year in 3A, but Sterling Dixon's coach, I should say, is a former Alabama recruiting coordinator, and that is Ronnie Cottrell at Mobile Christian. And so we hope to maybe speak to Coach Cottrell, and I think we will on the Recruiting Blitz down the road. Talk about Sterling Dixon. But Sterling Dixon chooses the University of Alabama, and Jimmy Stein is going to join us. He's based out of the city of Mobile and has been a longtime follower of recruiting. He is now an analyst, both for Alabama football and recruiting for On3Sports.com and Bama Insider, and he has a vast knowledge and he's seen Sterling Dixon on multiple occasions, and so wanted to bring Jimmy back into the conversation and talk about Sterling and what kind of player Alabama's getting. In Alabama's last football game a couple weeks ago now almost, and I guess it was more like a week ago. It seems like a couple weeks. But Alabama winning the Iron Bowl Thanksgiving weekend, Alabama winning 49-27. The leading tackler for the Crimson Tide was Deontay Lawson. He had 9 tackles, and so he has a bright future for the University of Alabama. He is an outstanding player and prospect, and so we're going to bring Jimmy Stein, and we'll probably ask him about both guys, the progress he sees Deontay Lawson making, and then Sterling Dixon and where he ultimately could land position-wise at Alabama. Some believe he may follow in the footsteps of Deontay and end up playing inside, but he did choose the University of Alabama yesterday. I don't get too excited about 2024 prospects just simply because it's a long way to the 2024 signing date. Now, we're just a few weeks away, as we said, from the early signing period on December the 21st to the 23rd, and Alabama's got the number 1 class in the country after adding a piece of that puzzle. And we talked to his head coach yesterday, and we were talking about Jaron Hamilton, and we talked to Mark Whittemore yesterday, who's the head coach of the Buckles Bobcats, and they're going to play tonight in the state semifinals against Venice, and he joined us yesterday. We appreciate him, Coach, for joining us. We had a good conversation, but again, he's certainly a player to watch, no doubt about it, and we look forward to Mark Whittemore and the Bobcats taking the field, and we'll monitor that game with Venice as they're headed down to play on the road and try to get a dub, and then they're in the semifinals for the second straight year and try to get Jaron Hamilton and his guys to the state finals after they knocked out Bartram Trail, a Bartram Trail team last week that was 12-0 and had already beaten them in the regular season, and they go on the road and they get a big win over Bartram Trail to advance to the semifinals for the second straight year. Jaron Hamilton, an explosive young man, an outstanding athlete, as you heard Coach say, 6'1", nearly 200 pounds, a guy that verticals over 40 inches, also runs a 10.500 and a 21.56 200, and so he's an outstanding player and someone that Alabama was glad to add to the recruiting class and now has, along with Malik Benson, Cole Adams, and of course Jalen Hale, a great 4-man receiving class for the University of Alabama. So I don't think they're going to add a 5th guy. I think 4 receivers is going to be enough. I think Alabama could add, though, as many as 6 more commitments, and we'll see. We'll see with Peter Woods. Could Alabama still make some inroads with Peter Woods before he signs the dotted line with Clemson. Could they get him on campus in the next 3 weeks or so? We will see about that. And certainly the dead period also lifted today, where college coaches can get out and come talk to kids. They can go watch kids. I think Hugh Freeze and his coaching staff, they're going to be out on the road big time, watching high school football playoff games, going to see local prospects, especially with this loaded in-state class. Said they are in Auburn and this new staff. We've already heard that we think strongly that Zach Etheridge is very, very likely going to stay in Auburn. Christian Robinson, the linebackers coach, could as well. Hugh Freeze is still putting together his staff from Liberty to Auburn, and he's bringing several people with him, I think, to the staff, especially the off-field staff and the player personnel department. I think Hugh Freeze is bringing several with him from Liberty. And also what he's doing is he's getting some kids back out of the portal that had planned to leave Auburn with the previous administration there. And we're talking about, of course, he's already got Landon King to come back out of the transfer portal. And he's also got Xavion Capers to come back and out of the portal and come back to Auburn because of the way he's developed wide receivers. No doubt about that. Xavion Capers, that was kind of a late breaking news last night into this morning that he is going to come back to Auburn. So that's good for the Tigers. And again, player development has not been great. I think when you look at it, they need a head coach to come in there and be able to develop offensive players. And Hugh Freeze has an outstanding, track record of doing that. And so we will continue to monitor Auburn recruiting very, very closely. It's interesting though. Auburn did have a young man who played quite a bit this year along the offensive line, Keandre Jones. He has entered the transfer portal to leave Auburn. So, and Auburn's already was going to be hurting along the offensive line because of all the experience lost. So Keandre Jones has decided to transfer. So Auburn will be trying to add more talent to the offensive line room almost assuredly. And then Hugh Freeze has hired his defensive line coach. He is another addition from Liberty, Jeremy Garrett. He is coming to the Plains to join Hugh Freeze, and he's got a lot of connections to Atlanta, and Langston Hughes High School has a ton of prospects. We talked about some of them. Jelani Thurman, the tight end. They've already got a young man committed from there. Joshua Horton, the defensive lineman that committed to North Carolina that may flip to Miami. He is also from Langston Hughes. So they've got several players. Bo Hughley, the offensive lineman as well, is someone that Auburn would be very, very interested in coming from Langston Hughes High School. So we're going to continue to monitor that, no doubt about it, and see who Auburn decides to add to that recruiting class, and if they can get that pipeline to continue to be very fruitful from Langston Hughes High School, because they've been very aggressive over there, and they'll be even more aggressive with Hugh Freeze and their NIL collective. Terrence Love already committed, the safety from Langston Hughes High School, and so again, they're going to try to add more pieces. Right now, Auburn's still light in the commitment department, relatively light anyway, due to their coaching turmoil. I believe they only have 13 guys committed, and so they're going to have to add more, and now actually 12. It's officially 12 hard commitments for Auburn, because as we know, there's been some guys reopen their recruitments and decide to move on, including one that's still considering Auburn. He's a wide receiver, Carmelo English, certainly from Central of Phoenix City. We'll see if the coaching change could help Auburn there, though, because Hugh Freeze has an outstanding, track record of developing wide receivers. We saw him do that with A.J. Brown, who's a stud, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had Laquan Treadwell from Chicago, Illinois, who ended up being a first-round draft pick of the certainly of the Minnesota Vikings. Laquan did, and then you also have Evan Ingram, the tight end. He's put a lot of guys in the National Football League skill-wise, and so Auburn. That's why Landon King and Xavion Capers and some of these guys are going to give it another go. Even though, as we said, Keandre Jones has put his name in the transfer portal, but we will see. But certainly, we're going to continue to monitor both Alabama and Auburn. But speaking of Alabama, Jimmy Stein in just a few minutes is going to join us from Bama Insider, part of On3Sports.com. We're going to get his thoughts on Alabama's, regular season, 10-2, a little disappointing, and that sometimes sounds absurd because they're ranked in the top 6 in the country right now for the college football playoff rankings. And if there was an expanded 12-team playoff, which is now we know going to happen in 2024, Alabama would be solidly in. But right now they're on the outside looking into the 4-team format. Going to need some help this weekend starting tonight. Everybody needs to be huge Utah fans to knock USC out of the college football playoff conversation because a loss would do that. And then hope that K-State can muster up their best performance of the year. Maybe TCU's tight. Maybe they solidly whip TCU, and then Alabama still has a case, along with the Ohio State Buckeyes, to get into the college football playoffs. So all is not completely lost, but Alabama's going to need a lot of help, and we'll talk to Jimmy Stein about that. We'll talk to him about this recruiting class for Alabama in 2023 and even early 2024 because Sterling Dixon's part of that from Mobile Christian School, and nobody is more well-connected and seen more players than Jimmy Stein. And we'll talk to him about the Super 7 tonight. I think the game I'm looking forward to the most, you've got the 6A game with the Saraland Spartans and Jeff Kelly. They are going to take on Chris Yeager and the Mountain Brook Spartans, Battle of the Spartans a little bit there, but they are going to – that'll be the wrap-up to your Super 7, and we've talked a little bit of Super 7 with Jason Caldwell this week, and we've told you about the schedule, and the schedule today is going to be a good one as well. As you know, we're the home of the Randolph Raiders here at ESPN 97.7 The Zone, the sister station of the Blitz Sports Radio, and the Cherokee County Warriors, who have an outstanding football team. They knocked out the Randolph Raiders a couple weeks ago in the quarterfinals, and now after just destroying their region rival Aniana, they will take on Andalusia. Andalusia, the alma mater of one Robert Keith Ory, Big Shot Bob. Andalusia is going to take on Cherokee County, and that's going to be today at 11 a.m. for the 4A state title, and then Death Taxes and the Fife Red Devils, led by Hall of Famer Paul Benefield. Paul Benefield and Fife going for another state title, the only unbeaten team left in the AHSAA playoffs. 14-0 Fife taking on 12-2 BB Comer at 3, and then as we said, that Mountain Brook 12-2, Saraland 13-1. Class 6A final tonight, so we're looking forward to both of those. Big congrats to the state champions that have already been crowned. Thompson, a 49-24 winner over Auburn on Wednesday in your 7A final. Piedmont losing to St. James yesterday. Jimmy Perry at St. James getting his first state title as a head coach. He had some as an assistant, but he gets his first state title ring as St. James wins and goes to 13-2. They beat the 12 and now 3 Piedmont Bulldogs. Piedmont did not repeat under Steve Smith, but they've had such a great run. As St. James wins that 45-28, and then you had your 1A final, and Leroy was able to soundly defeat Pickens County. Leroy finishing 13-1 over Michael Williams, former Alabama tight ends, Pickens County Tornadoes, and then Ramsey, the Rams, their second state title since reviving football. They defeat Charles Henderson of Troy last night. So big time congrats to all these teams and what they've been able to accomplish at the Super 7. And it's going to be another great evening tonight as we follow and continue to track all of the results of the AHSAA Super 7. And again, the Pickens County, Tornadoes and Michael Williams, they're a perennial power, but they fall to Leroy. Leroy, an outstanding program as well in that 1A championship game. And then, as we said, the 5A finals, Ramsey defeating certainly Charles Henderson of Troy, and then earlier in the day, St. James with just that unbelievable second half, down 20-10, and they win 45-28 over the Piedmont Bulldogs. But we're going to go on a break. When we come back, Jimmy Stein, BamaInsider.com, part of On3 Sports, set to join us and talk some Alabama football and recruiting. Stay with us here on the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. I'm D Squared.
The Blitz has been called.
TOC Sports has been there for you. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what does that mean? It means for more than 20 years, Alabama's largest orthopedic group has been there providing coverage and care to more schools and student athletes in the Tennessee Valley than any other group. It means whether you are the star football player, the all-region volleyball ace, or someone who hurt their knee in a weekend pickup basketball game, TOC Sports physicians are proud to have the opportunity to care for all your orthopedic needs. It means for parents, coaches, athletes, desk jockeys, or even weekend warriors, TOC Sports physicians continue to meet and exceed the orthopedic and sports medicine needs of our community. But most importantly, during these challenging times, we're here for you now and will continue to be here. So as long as there are players on the field, games to be played, and contests to be won, the orthopedic specialists from TOC Sports will be ready to help. We don't know what the future holds, but you can count on the TOC Sports team to stay committed to you so you can stay in the game. Call 256-539-2728 today and ask to see a TOC Sports physician. Check them out online, also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding the solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
Tom Luganbill here for my friends at Woody Anderson Ford. Bobby White and his team take great pride in their service department, and you can see it the moment you walk into those beautiful new service lanes. And just like a championship team, they all work together to make sure your experience is second to none, whether you drive a Ford or not. Also, check out the gold certified pre-owned inventory at Woody Anderson Ford for great deals every day. Stop by and see them at Jordan and Sparkman or at Woody Anderson of Madison on Hughes Road, or visit WoodyAndersonFord.com.
As a mother, you don't want to have to worry about this bill is coming, but then she needs this chemo. That's a decision you shouldn't have to make.
It's a huge burden lifted financially, and so it allows you to give singular focus to your child. I've never known a hospital that takes care of their patients so thoroughly.
That was the first thing I was like, how are we going to do this? When they told us that we didn't have to pay a single bill, I was like, wow. They pretty much have saved us.
It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders, and now your focus is supporting this child.
There is not another hospital like St. Jude. The patient care is unmatchable. It saved my life. It saved my daughter's life. It saved our family.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Welcome back to the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. I'm D Squared, Drew DeArmond. We thank you for listening and tuning in. Don't forget to tune in later today from 2 to 4 for the Bandyman, Bailey Lowry, and Captain Cool, John Abraham. They will bring you the afternoon Blitz. Yet another reason to download the Blitz Sports Radio app for the quality sports talk from 2 to 4 as they bring that to you Monday through Friday. They'll have some outstanding content as they preview the Pac-12 championship game, which is tonight. Alabama going to be huge Utah fans. And of course, Championship Saturday coming up, and we're going to be big fans of the Kansas State Wildcats if you're an Alabama guy, and you also need some other, it wouldn't hurt at all, as we said, for you need Utah to win tonight, and you need certainly Kansas State to be impressive, and then just cross your fingers and toes. Still going to be an uphill battle for Alabama, but you never know, and you need some even for some perception, maybe even Michigan to struggle with Purdue, so it doesn't make their win over Ohio State look even better, and so maybe some of the luster will be worn off the Ohio State Buckeyes. But again, I think Alabama is one of the four most talented teams. They should be in the playoff, but again, they had two narrow losses at Tennessee, at LSU, two very difficult venues. They lose 52-49, and then, of course, as we know, in overtime, 32-31 on a walk-off. So they're going to need help and going to need quite a few things to go their way in the next couple of days if they want to reach the college football playoff. If not, they're likely Sugar Bowl bound, but we will see. No worse than the Orange Bowl, but Sugar Bowl would seem to be, in my opinion, the destination. But Alabama football, they're going to undergo some coaching changes. I think we all understand that this staff is not going to come back intact, but they're trying to finish recruiting. And speaking of recruiting, they got a big piece of the 2024 puzzle yesterday. They got another piece a few days ago with Jaron Hamilton, the wide receiver. We talked to his coach, Mark Whittemore, yesterday on the Recruiting Blitz, and now we're going to talk to our next guest, who I believe this is his third appearance on the show. He does a great job for Bama on 3, which is really Bama Insider, and that is part of on3sports.com. He is a football team expert and I would say recruiting analyst, football analyst for Bama Insider. Also helps coordinate David Morris and all those guys, and the recruiting coordinator for QB Country. And you can follow him on Twitter at QB_country, and that's Jimmy Stein. Jimmy, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving, man. Welcome back to Huntsville on the Recruiting Blitz. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Drew. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you, man. And there's nobody that watches prospects more than you do, it, especially in your port city of Mobile. A big piece of the puzzle for Alabama yesterday in 2024, Sterling Dixon, part of Ronnie Cottrell's program with the Mobile Christian Leopards. They go to the state semifinals in 3A before bowing out. This kid put up, I think, 172 tackles. I think I saw 18 sacks. Big-time prospect. What kind of player is Alabama getting in Sterling Dixon?
Well, he's sort of the modern-day linebacker, and by that, I think Drew, we sort of grew up with the idea that linebackers are Dick Butkus. They're these guys that are in the tackle box, and they make a ton of tackles, and they're good against the run, and they're these big, thick guys and big hitters, not afraid to take on fullbacks in the hole. Well, the game has changed a lot. Now linebackers really are just larger defensive backs because they have so many responsibilities in the pass game. Now, where Sterling Dixon is so good is his versatility and athleticism. He was actually a starting defensive back in the 9th and the 10th grade, just a bigger playmaking safety. Again, was a really good high school player right out of the gate. I saw him, first time in the 9th grade and thought, well, I'll be seeing this guy play football for quite a while. He was really talented right out of the gate. So he's good in coverage, but as you see from the sack numbers, he's also an outstanding pass rusher. I think he had 6 sacks in one game a couple of weeks ago in the early rounds of the playoffs. He's that type of high production, high volume player to where he just fills the stat sheet every week, but it's really due to his versatility. He's going to make plays in coverage. He's going to make plays rushing the passer, and then he's also going to get his 10 to 12 tackles a game or more in the tackle box because he's really good against the run, too. He just checks every box. He's not the biggest kid in the world, but, again, that's sort of the new wave linebacker, right? The new wave linebacker isn't built like Dick Butkus. They're built more like big defensive backs because they have to have that DB skill set. And here's a kid who actually played DB his first 2 years in high school. So I think this is a great pickup for those who kind of want an Alabama comp. The weird thing to me is, from Mobile Christian playing for Ronnie Cottrell, the guy he's really similar to is Deontay Lawson,
yes,
who plays quite a bit for Alabama right now. He will be one of Alabama's primary front seven defenders next season for sure. I think Sterling Dixon reminds me a lot of Deontay Lawson, doing the same things at Mobile Christian that Deontay did, which is play all over the field, play multiple positions, be highly productive on both sides of the ball. I think you'll see Sterling on offense quite a bit next season for Mobile Christian. So just a real similar kid to Deontay Lawson, and I think everyone should expect Sterling to be the same type of player at Alabama.
And what have you seen growth-wise out of Deontay? I was really impressed with him last spring going into his freshman year. Played mostly special teams and then started pushing for playing time this year, and is coming off of a very strong Iron Bowl where he led Alabama in tackles with 9.
Yep. Deontay played quite a bit this season at the will linebacker spot,
right
next to Henry To'o in the middle of the Alabama defense. But he split snaps quite a bit with Jalen Moody, and they would kind of substitute a little bit based on down and distance, but sometimes opponent. There would be some games Moody would play more snaps, other games Lawson would play more snaps, depending on what they wanted out of that position and the matchup per opponent. I think that the challenge for Deontay is next year, hey, you're probably not only playing full-time every snap, every game, but probably also moving over to the Mike position where Deontay will take over the To'o role of making all the line calls, getting everybody lined up, sort of being the quarterback of the front seven. I think Deontay is uniquely suited to do that. He's a really bright kid. He's a natural leader. And I think the extensive playing time he got this season will really help. I think he's doing well, and I expect him to be an all-star performer for Alabama next season.
So you think Sterling Dixon also projects inside, but a guy that could also maybe be in the rabbit package and rush off the edge on third down?
Exactly. I think, there's a really good chance that in his 4 years at Alabama, he'll play a couple of different spots. And that's just due to his versatility. I think Alabama has taught him about outside linebacker. I think if you ask him, what position you're going to play, he's going to say outside. And I have no doubt that he will spend time there in his Alabama career. But in my mind, watching him play, I like him in that will spot at Alabama just because that's the spot that lends itself to the versatility, where you do line up outside on some rush downs, where you are inside on some run downs, where you have some responsibilities insofar as coverage against tight ends, against running backs, dropping into zone coverage. I think Sterling's capable of all of that. But, hey, if you're just wanting on third down rushing the passer, he's going to be really good at that too because he can really get downhill in a hurry.
And for this Alabama season, we just kind of talked a little bit about it before we brought you on. A little disappointing just simply because I think if this team had been more consistent, and really I don't think they found their offensive identity until the last 2.5 games where they committed more to a physical running game with Jace McClellan, with Jahmyr Gibbs returning, and then helped Bryce Young out, and there was more play calling balance, which is 30 passes, 35, 40 runs in the attack. The Alabama looks like it's going to be a long odds to get to the playoff this year anyway. But how do you frame this season? I don't quite think it's 2010. 2010 is the one that's compared to. It's probably the closest to that. I think this team still was, I thought that 2010 team really did underachieve. This one did to a point. But what do we make of this? I still think the injury to Bryce Young is really what set this team back. I still think if he's healthy, they likely, and I know he still performed very well against Tennessee, but I didn't think he was himself against LSU.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I kind of thought LSU was his worst game, and I point to the shoulder on that for sure. I do think the single most impactful event of the season that affected the one-loss record for Alabama is Bryce's shoulder. He was just not the same again until maybe the Auburn game. I felt in the Auburn game he had some velocity back, and there was no coincidence that Alabama went to the vertical passing attack. I think they just couldn't do that with Bryce's shoulder until the Auburn game, until he reached that point health-wise. I agree with you, Drew, that even though you hear the 2010 comparisons come up, I don't think that's apples to apples. I think it might even be somewhat similar to 2019, but not apples to apples there either. It just kind of stands on its own. It's kind of an odd year where it felt like the sum of the parts didn't equal what it should. In other words, you still have all these talented football players, but then you add up all those parts, and it should have been better than it was. Now, why is that? I do think Bryce's shoulder affected a lot on offense in terms of play calling, in terms of what you had to remove from the playbook to play around Bryce's shoulder and protect his shoulder and still keep him on the field. And defensively, before the Auburn game, I was saying this, although the Auburn game changed my mind a little bit, but before the Auburn game, if you took out the defensive disaster in Knoxville, Alabama's defense ranked extremely highly in the country. If you remove that Tennessee game, all the other games Alabama had played reasonably well. If you measure things in terms of points and yards, Alabama was without a doubt a national top 10 defense if you took out the Tennessee game. And that's kind of how I felt about it. Like, well, maybe that Tennessee game was just a one-off. All the other games played pretty good on defense, but then along comes Auburn, and they rushed for over 300 yards. Alabama's defense sort of made them look like 1995 Nebraska to an extent. And now you're back to wondering, what the defense should be better than this. I mean, what's wrong? So it was, I think, almost a frustrating season where part of the frustration was the team was good. You can't win 10 games and not be good. You can't put up the numbers Alabama put up and not be good. For all the complaining about the offense, Drew, only 4 teams in college football scored more points than Alabama did in 2022. So it wasn't bad by any stretch. It also wasn't great, and it wasn't what we've seen throughout most of the Saban era. And Alabama has to figure out why and solve it over the next 9 months, and do so with largely a new football team, because Alabama's going to lose a lot of guys to the NFL, which again is more proof that this team should have been really good. But Coach Saban's got to find the answers between now and next September.
And I'm of the opinion, I know there's been so much talk about Drake May, and he's had a great year at North Carolina, but I would ride with Ty Simpson and Milroe, and I think Ty, I'm just going to say it, I think Ty's the future at quarterback. I'm not in favor of bringing in quarterbacks from the portal. I don't think – look, it didn't work for Auburn and Zach Calzada. He was banged up. It doesn't always – if the grass isn't always greener on the other side. To me, especially when you have quarterbacks, I think they need to be brought up within your organization, within your team. They're familiar with their teammates. And with the way Alabama recruits, they've been recruiting very highly at the position. I still think Ty Simpson has a ton of potential. Drake May redshirted at North Carolina. They didn't see him until this year. I still think Ty is got a bright future at Alabama. What is your opinion of Simpson, and what would you do if you were Alabama? Would you look for a portal quarterback? Personally, I'm not in favor of that.
Well, you said Drake May. I don't believe Drake May is going anywhere. I don't either. I do not believe he's transferring to any place. And I don't really know where the Alabama stuff comes from, to be honest. Drake May's not going anywhere. Now, if North Carolina's staff disintegrates for whatever reason, then I think there's the possibility that Drake could get in the portal and end up somewhere. But no, I've never considered that realistic. I don't think that there's a reason to get a kid out of the portal unless he is some sort of a clear upgrade over what Alabama's going to have. And I'm with you, Drew. I think Ty Simpson's going to be very difficult to beat out. I'm not down on Jalen Milroe. I think he's more of a developmental quarterback. I've always compared Milroe to Jalen Hurts in that sense. A kid that's going to start out at a certain place and then improve each year incrementally. But I don't think there's any reason for Alabama to be patient and wait for Milroe's development when Ty Simpson's probably ready to go right now. I think all his years growing up in a coach's household, sort of being immersed in college football with the UT Martin program, even when he was in middle school and high school, I think all that stuff sort of sped Ty's development. Now he spent a full year at Alabama learning Alabama's system, growing physically, getting stronger, and again, knowing the scheme like he finally knows it now. I think it's going to be very difficult for Jalen Milroe to beat Ty Simpson out. I wouldn't be surprised if there was competition through the spring and into fall camp. But as of now, I not only expect Ty Simpson to eventually win the job, I think Ty Simpson's going to be a very good SEC quarterback next fall.
Yeah.
And again, that's not to diminish Milroe. I think people might be surprised how good Milroe will look next fall, too.
I completely agree with you. We're on the same path there. And I know we've seen Trayshawn Holding go into the portal, Christian Leary. I expect Tyu Jones-Bell. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Harrell did. I mean, he didn't play much this year. He graduated. He had one catch. Because I think the future is the Kobe Prentices, the Isaiah Bonds. Another underlying part of the Iron Bowl was Kendrick Law, who I think is starting to come along. I do like Ja'Cory Brooks. The interesting thing is going to be Jermaine Burton. Does he come back? Probably could benefit if he's now just getting comfortable in this Alabama system. And then I like this foursome of wide receivers got committed. Yesterday on the show, Jimmy, we had Mark Whittemore on from Buckles High School in Gainesville, F.W. Buckles, the Bobcats, and he had glowing things to say about his guy Jaron Hamilton. I mean, you're talking about a guy, and I'm sure you've watched his film. You're a recruit, Nick. 6'1". He told us he's just slightly under 200 pounds. A guy with a 40-inch vertical, a 21.56 200, and a 10.500. A kid that's very, very explosive, and somebody that along the lines of an Amari Cooper and a Jalen Waddle just sort of came to Alabama's camp and set it on its ear.
Yes, I think, to me, the thing that's obviously he's a big-time athlete and he's an outside playmaker, something Alabama was really missing this season on the field. I think Hamilton fits that profile. He's just got to develop into that sort of player at the college level. But what I really like is the fact that he came to Alabama's camp. He probably showed up, I'm imagining, not a priority, but then became one over his performance in camp at Alabama. And even though his name might not be, a name that you associate with five stars in the 2023 class, Alabama recruited him like one, in the sense that once they became sold on Jaron Hamilton, he was a high priority for them, period, every day since this past camp, this season. So this is a guy Alabama specifically likes a lot. They never wavered on that, and then he finally committed. And he does fill sort of a role that Alabama had a very difficult time filling this past season. I don't know what kind of impact he can make as a freshman, but outside playmaking has to be a high priority in this group.
It really does, and I can't wait to see Malik Benson as well, who's trying to early enroll, who is a junior college transfer, maybe the best junior college player in the country. What impact he will have at Alabama. But last few minutes with Jimmy Stein, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about this because I know you've seen them. And, of course, Alabama has to hold on to him for another couple of years, but it just seems like the more I see and hear about Ryan Williams that he's magical. I know you've seen Sarah Land. Am I not – I guess what I've probably looked forward to this matchup more than any in the Super 7 this year, Mountain Brook and Sarah Land. Am I overstating that, or should I be this excited about this game tonight at 7:00?
No, you should definitely be this excited. Sarah Land's such a show. Ryan Williams is the headliner, but they have other guys that I think even in Alabama is going to be interested in, including the quarterback KJ Lacey, who I think he's a class of 25 guy, just like Ryan Williams. And we think at QB Country, where we train KJ, that KJ will be a national elite quarterback among perhaps the top 10 quarterbacks in the country in his class. He is a lot of fun to watch, especially for Alabama fans, because I think it's impossible to watch KJ Lacey without making the Bryce Young comparisons. I'm not putting this on him that he is Bryce Young, but he's just so similar in so many ways, even down to the 9 he wears on his jersey, which he does wear because he's a Bryce Young fan. Just in terms of the size and athleticism, in terms of the magnetism that he plays with, he throws the ball from every arm angle imaginable, and each arm angle somehow produces a ton of velocity. So KJ Lace is a real talented, magnetic, fun kid to watch. He's one of the reasons Ryan Williams puts up those numbers, because KJ gets him the ball in the right place at the right time so often. But Ryan Williams really is an extremely special player. He might be the best prospect in the state, regardless of age. And, I hate comparing him to a Julio, because that sounds crazy because they're so different as receivers, but I just say that because I remember when Alabama signed Julio, I was absolutely convinced after watching Julio play in high school. I was telling people then, I'm like, Julio's going to show up and he's going to be probably the best receiver on the team the day he arrives. And shortly thereafter is going to prove he might be the best player on the whole team, or certainly on the short list of best players on the whole team. I think Ryan Williams is going to be a player of that magnitude. I think Ryan Williams, even at Nick Saban's Alabama, he's going to show up one of the best players. And that's stunning on a roster like Alabama's year in and year out. So he is really special. KJ Lacey's a special quarterback. And Saraland has 6 or 8 other sophomores, all the same age, all Ryan and KJ's age. They're probably all. There's certainly about 8 FBS sophomore prospects on that team, and I think 5 or 6 of them or more could end up in the SEC.
That is a loaded team for Jeff Kelly, and yet they're playing Chris Yeager in Mountain Brook, and you've studied high school football in Alabama long enough to know. I know they haven't been to the final since '96 with Malin Kent and Joey Jones. They won a couple back-to-back with former Alabama running back Major Ogilvy and Rick Rhodes in the 70s, but this is a system program who I had a friend who saw them beat Muscle Shoals in the semifinals, and 117 players, no freshmen on the team, but 117 kids. Mountain Brook, a machine in their own right, and it's benefited them to move down from 7A to 6A.
Yeah, they'll be. They might be out-athleted, but that doesn't make a difference. When you play Mountain Brook, they're just such an extremely well-coached, fundamentally sound, and probably underrated athletically. I mean, I think it's really easy to say they don't have athletes just because they don't have guys that rank, in the top 10, 20, 30 in the state in their class. That doesn't mean they're not athletic. They wouldn't get this far without it. So probably underrated athleticism, but they will be out-athleted tonight. It's just a great, intriguing matchup of the fundamentally sound, super coached machine, as you called them, kind of a system, versus these amazing athletes from Saraland that everyone has to remember are mostly 10th graders.
It's going to be a great matchup, no doubt about it, and I know you guys will be watching it very closely on BamaInsider.com. And before we let you go, Jimmy, your thoughts on the recruiting weekend for Alabama. I know they've got 6 official visitors coming in. Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings do a great job for you guys over there, but your thoughts on this first weekend in December now that the last 3-week stretch is upon us for Alabama to finish out this recruiting class?
I just really want to stress a couple things, not about specific individual players so much as this is the craziest recruiting cycle of all time, thanks to all the changes, specifically NIL. It's not just the number one factor in recruiting. It is recruiting. This cycle is how you're dealing with NIL. So Alabama's, I think, at 23, 24 commitments. I think Hamilton might have been 24th. And it's not going to be so much about who Alabama's going to add to maybe get up to 30 in the group. To me, it's holding on to what you got.
Yeah,
that's going to be just as difficult as adding the last few names. Just because these kids are committed to Alabama doesn't mean other schools aren't still recruiting them very hard with packages. And that used to be something that wasn't talked about much. Now it's all completely illegal. And I think holding on to the 24 you have is crucial for Alabama, because those 24 have helped Alabama become the number one class in the country. But you lose a few of them, and all of a sudden you're not number one anymore. So I think recruiting these last, what are we down to, about 19 days now, these last 19 days of recruiting in this cycle, it's almost just as much about holding on to what you got as it is adding the new names.
Yeah, it really is. And Jalil Hurley committed from Florence High School in this weekend. Yanze Pierre also committed an edge from Eufaula, who's probably, just because he committed so early, is kind of not been talked about enough. Hunter Osborne from Hewitt-Trustville, defensive lineman, one of the most underrated athletes in the Southeast United States. Bray Hubbard will be making his visit. Raquez McElderry from Anniston, interior offensive lineman. And then Tyler Scott, the only one that's not committed to Alabama, that's coming in. Alabama trying to add another corner, Jimmy.
Yeah, they're a little short there. A lot of people project Hurley to be a safety at Alabama. I mean, I'm one of the very few. I really like him at cornerback. Now a lot of DBs at Alabama sort of cross-train in both spots, so we'll see where Hurley eventually ends up. But Alabama would like to sign at least one more true cornerback, and Tyler Scott is a guy who, I call him one of these senior, kind of blossom late, kind of a late blooming prospect compared to others.
Yeah.
Whereas Tyler Scott wasn't a name you heard this summer, but now you hear his name associated with the best programs in the South. So he really did blow up based on what happened during his senior year. Happens a lot, and hopefully you just have room to add a guy like that who doesn't become what he is until late in his high school career.
No question. Well, Jimmy, we appreciate the extended conversation. Again, we hope you had a great Thanksgiving holiday. We've always enjoyed having you, and it's once again a great segment on the Recruiting Blitz here on Blitz Sports Radio. Let everybody know how to connect with your work and what you guys have going on at Bama Insider on On3 Sports.
Yeah, sure, exactly. It's BamaInsider.com. I know everyone that listens to this show is really into recruiting, and we're about the only. I think we're the only website covers Alabama football recruiting with two full-time recruiting reporters and analysts, and Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings. We're also spending considerable time at On3 covering the portal. We have full-time national reporters that have access and report on the portal constantly. So On3 Sports and BamaInsider.com.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate it.
Thanks, sure.
That's Jimmy Stein. We're going to go on a break and wrap up this this edition of the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio on this Friday. I'm D Squared. Stay with us.
The Blitz has been called.
Are you tired of chasing a roofing contractor to show up on time or even show up at all? I'm Sam Fleming with Fleming Roofing and Restoration. Our motto at Fleming Roofing is we show up. Our goal at Fleming Roofing is to provide the reliable customer service that you deserve, and we have the resources to meet all of your roofing needs: residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. We are manufacturer certified for roof coatings, single-ply membranes, and asphalt shingles. Whenever you need a roofing professional you can count on, call Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We are committed to finding the solution that meets your needs. We don't have quotas or heavy-handed sales tactics. Fleming Roofing, we have expert experience. We show up. Free estimates, residential, commercial, industrial, replacement, or repairs. Check us out at FlemingHSV.com. FlemingHSV.com. When you need a quick response, it's Fleming Roofing and Restoration. We show up.
To fasten your seatbelt, insert the metal fittings and tighten the strap. And in the event of a sudden rush of cabin generosity, your seat cushion can be used to grant wishes. How? By donating your airline miles to Make-A-Wish. Why? Because your frequent flyer account is stuffed as fat as your carry-on. And just like the workout clothes you packed, you're never going to use all those miles. But if you donate some to Make-A-Wish, you can give wishes wings and put sick kids right where you're sitting now. No, not in seats to Newark. Seats to fun family places, breaks from treatments and doctor visits and hospital stays, wishes to feel better, and lots of times get better too. Push your call buttons if you feel me. Alrighty then, well, once we reach cruising altitude, you can use your electronic device to make your pledge of miles or money to Make-A-Wish at GiveWishesWings.org. That's GiveWishesWings.org. And then move about the cabin with pride, knowing that you've made a huge difference in the life of a Make-A-Wish kid, because wishes work wonders, people.
Wrapping up this edition of the Recruiting Blitz on Blitz Sports Radio. Big thanks to Jimmy Stein as he joined us from BamaInsider.com, part of On3Sports.com. Don't forget later today from 2 to 4, the Bandyman, Bailey Lowry, and Captain Cool, John Abraham, going to bring you the afternoon Blitz. Sounds like they've got a loaded show. And again, everybody have a great weekend. Stay warm. Don't forget the Super 7 action tonight. You can watch that locally on Alabama Public Television. That Mountain Brook Saraland game Jimmy Stein and I just talked about. That's going to be great. Fife from over here off Sand Mountain. They're going to be playing at 3 o'clock against BB Comer. And then 11 a.m., of course, Cherokee County going to be taking on Andalusia. So a loaded Super 7, final day of that. But have a great weekend, and we'll come to you Monday from 9 a.m. on the Recruiting Blitz with D Squared. Have a great weekend, everyone.